Hello, I am Haley Drennan, and I am presenting our work on exploring the use of multi-beam sonar sound speed corrections to map water column variability. The map you see here is a representation of the JEBCO 2021 ocean map. In this image, the areas shown in black are the portions of the ocean which are not supported by direct measurements, whereas the blues to purple reveal the approximately 20% of the global ocean that has been mapped. This map was compiled through the collaborative efforts of the Nippon Foundation JEBCO Seabed 2030 project and the contributions of data from stakeholders across the globe. Accelerating the completion of this map relies on data sharing and technology innovation, as well as working together, leveraging data processing efforts undertaken around the world. The Global Multi-Resolution Topography Synthesis Project, or GMRT, has been underway for nearly 2 decades and offers several tools that help with the compilation and assembly of data into a high-quality data synthesis. Developed and operated at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, GMRT focuses largely on processing and integrating data from U.S. research vessels. These tools were designed to optimize the quality and integration of multi-beam data with a particular focus on opportunistic datasets acquired during transits. These tools used by GMRT provide an integration perspective and helps to ensure that the data can be easily integrated into a high-quality product that meets the needs of multiple users from multiple disciplines. So recognizing the need to accelerate the rate of data processing and integration, the GMRT tiling reviewing tools have been adapted so that they can be distributed for the use in the broader community. This helps to distribute the workload and establish a common fit-for-purpose standard of data products. The distributable GMRT tools have been successfully deployed for at-sea use aboard the EV Nautilus. Standard operating procedure on the Nautilus is to now use these tools as a part of their at-sea data processing pipeline. At the conclusion of the cruise, tiled rasters and process swath files are delivered for final review before rapid integration into GMRT and delivery of the final product for public access via NOAA NCEI. The GMRT tools allow us to review any publicly available process swath files, which can be transformed into tiled rasters, compared with underlying GMRT content, and then hopefully rapidly integrated, much like the data from the EV Nautilus. In some cases, however, we find that process swath files need additional cleaning or corrections before they can be integrated. Usually, process swath files that we download are reasonably well edited, but often the sound speed corrections are necessary. While we do have an IHO standard for total vertical uncertainty, or TVU, which can help guide us through these sound speed corrections, we want to make sure that the data product is fit for purpose, i.e. safety of navigation versus research or mapping the gaps. Several surveys from the Blake Plateau that we downloaded for integration presented sound speed issues. As we worked to correct these data, we discovered that an unusually high number of corrections were needed over a short spatial and temporal scale. In cases such as this, where sound speed corrections are needed, if process data are made available in the swath format, we are able to undertake additional processing. So we are hugely grateful to our colleagues who make data available in the GSF format, so we have the ability to make these corrections. Our approach with the GSF formatted files is to leverage the edits that were previously made in order to avoid duplication of effort with respect to data cleaning, and then we will apply those edits to the raw data files. We find that addressing sound speed problems is best and most easily done using MB Systems' MB Velocity tool. So we make sound speed corrections there, and then we finish our processing with MB System. Through our reprocessing efforts, we are able to demonstrate how simple sound speed corrections yields a better quality bathymetry product that is more self-consistent. The black profile and the top map are of the downloaded processed data. The red profile and the bottom map shows the data product after following the GMRT workflow. The example you see here, the downloaded data has a vertical uncertainty of over 20 meters in magnitude, which exceeds the 12-meter IHO allowable total vertical uncertainty at this depth. The example you see here is in a transit swath file. We often encounter the most egregious sound speed errors in transit swath files. Here, the magnitude of the offset is nearly 40 meters and 300 meters of water. The IHO recommended total vertical uncertainty at this depth is roughly 7 meters. Finally, this cruise is an example of where corrections were necessary to dampen the artifacts, where the vertical offset is within IHO spec, but the overall quality of the data is poor. Because the seafloor is so flat, this artifact really stands out, creating this like washboarding effect that may be easy for a trained eye to understand, but risks misinterpretation to a less informed data consumer. To start to investigate whether the sound speed corrections might reveal coherent patterns related to water column properties, we generated difference grids which show the vertical offsets between downloaded swath files and reprocessed swath files in meters. We also explored how best to visualize this data and plotted the difference in sound speed to explore spatial patterns, recognizing that the sound speed profiles do not necessarily reflect true water column structure, but are more indicative of our solution that gave us the most self-consistent bathymetric surface. Looking closer at the gridded data, we overlaid the magnitude of difference points over the difference grids for each of the surveys we looked at. Here, sound speed corrections frequently yielded 5-meter vertical offsets, but we also noted that the largest sound speed corrections are not necessarily associated with the largest vertical differences. Looking at another survey, we found that the sound speed corrections generally related to areas with large vertical differences, and that the areas with no vertical differences had no sound speed corrections. When comparing the processed GSF data with the processed files we produced, we noticed that some areas where we did not make sound speed corrections showed vertical offsets, indicating sound speed corrections were erroneously applied in original processing. Finally, this is that washboard cruise I mentioned earlier. In this area, we found that a different sound speed correction was necessary on every single file. By the size of the magnitude points, you can tell that these were very small corrections, but they were necessary in order to create a consistent surface. This changes as we grew closer to the shelf break, where you'll notice that the largest sound speed corrections were necessary. And while noting that these files were 40 kilometers in length, we noticed that the sound speed and water column characteristics varied within a single file, in addition to showing spatial coherence, suggesting that there may be some coherence to the water column characteristics as well. This map shows where these sites fall in a broader regional context, and we have overlaid a map of ocean currents from Oscar data displayed on earth.nullschool.net, corresponding to July 2018, which was a month that was representative for 2 of the 3 cruises here, to give us a sense of what we might expect in terms of spatial variability. It is not at all surprising to see variable water column characteristics in this region, given the influence of the Gulf Stream and neighboring eddies. Here we're highlighting the areas with the most sound speed corrections, which help us understand how each of these cruises presented a challenge to process the respective sound speed profiles. This is just a first order comparison of these spatial patterns, and there is more work we plan to do to better understand what it is telling us. In conclusion, complex water column characteristics can be challenging with respect to optimizing multibeam data quality, but with the right tools, these challenges can be overcome in post-processing. Sharing multibeam data in swath format is hugely beneficial as it enables this post-processing like we've undertaken here. We should work together as a community to make our data products fit for purpose. IHO specifications may or may not be adequate for deep water. Sound speed profiles from multibeam data can provide some information about variable water column characteristics, and there is much more work to be done to fully understand these signals. For the next steps, we hope to further explore the use of sound speed corrections as a proxy for oceanographic conditions. We also want to share our tools and approach for sound speed corrections via best practice documents and possibly a webinar, so we can minimize redundant data processing effort. Finally, we hope that these tools, guidelines, and efforts can help maximize data acquisition. We encourage people to acquire as much data as often as possible. Even opportunistic data that requires additional post-processing will help us complete the map. If our work interests you, you can reach out to us via my email. Thank you.